That was Finastra.
Sorry, what'd you say? That? Pick up a little G-Mark.
It is time.
There's a few of them still out there.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm done.
No, yeah. And what I did is
You got the culture is very important, and I have to learn how to talk about
Ladies and gentlemen and honored guests, welcome back after lunch. It's our job to keep you awake. So this is the CISO panel. Thank you for coming out. This is something that we've done in the past at B-Sides. And usually at the end of these, I always run up and said, I get your LinkedIn or great business cards. Today I have the privilege to be up here with this panel. And so I'd like to do kind of brief opportunity to say, here's what we're going to do. We'll allow each member to introduce themselves anyway, although Steve is not going to give you what he sent me, which is his entire life story. 3.5 pages. They said, send us a bio. Like, boy, did I get a bio.
I'll be in the room next door. 3 hours starts in
Right,
about.
we're in the I Love Steve room. And then we'll ask each of these folks to introduce themselves 30 seconds, a minute or so to kind of, where they are, what they do and stuff like that. Then I've got some prepared questions we can roll into. And if you think the prepared questions are working for you, or if you got a better one, you can interrupt the show and do that. But we've got enough to go in case everybody falls asleep. We'll keep answering those questions. So that's kind of the ground rules here. My name is G. Mark Hardy, National Security Corporation. I work as a CISO, actually a virtual CISO for 3 other companies, plus do B-Sides and a lot of other things like that. So it's a privilege to be here. I also have a podcast called CISO Tradecraft, because I'm told I had a face for radio. And so I just recorded my 75th weekly episode. Hopefully, it's kind of a giving back to the community. If anybody knows how I can monetize it, let me know too.
Advertising.
Advertise, yeah, there's no pretty much no
Sponsored by Optus.
Sponsored by Optus. I just got right there. Really, some people, my listeners have check marks. They're all CISOs.
Yay.
Okay. What ought to do? Steve Hindle from Mad Mobile Incorporated.
Yeah, everybody. I mean,
Thank you very much.
No. Cheers. They're good. They're nice. Yeah, I used to be with CISO Enterprises, just here in the Beer Camp building in Tampa, and exited a 25-year career with CISO last year after building individualized and customized security infrastructure for 400 of your top well-known brands, from the phone you hold in your hand and the console your kids play on, the bank that you bank with. So realistically, I had a 25-year career, which is unheard of from CSOs, purely because every single day was different. And I was really securing 400 companies at once, which was great and not challenging at all. Now I'm with Mad Mobile. We are Apple's primary go-to-market payment provider, retail, restaurant, QR code, all the things that you guys are looking at and going, oh my God, we love. I used to live in China for a short time, and when I came to the US 10 years ago, I couldn't believe you guys were writing checks. And then when I went to China, and you're buying food from a street vendor on a cart with your phone, and nobody carries cash and nobody carries cards. And then I come back to the US and I'm like, oh my God, we got a long way to go. And then that's exactly what Mad Mobile's trying to do. They're trying to put the whole payment processing away from the old POS, swipe your card devices. And I love the fact that POS stands for point of sale and something else.
All right. Thank you very much, Steve.
That's what we're trying to do.
So that's neat. Rolando Torres from Abacode.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, we can keep you entertained enough so you stay awake. I am co-founder and CEO of Abacode. Any guys familiar with Abacode? We're a local consultant firm. We provide cybersecurity and compliance services for companies in the U.S., South America, and Europe. Me personally, I originated from Puerto Rico, so there's a little bit of an accent there, which I love. There's, I'm former Accenture, so I was with for 16 years. That helped me have some of the, discipline and rudiment on what we do, like working 70-hour weeks, as you can imagine. And, we started Abacode about 8 years ago, very much focused on cybersecurity. Then we added a spin on compliance, focusing cybersecurity specifically on the standards that are required by the industry. or the ones that are, recommended by the agencies and the government. So, I hope we can have a good time today. And
I hope so
wanna go
too.
there. Yeah.
Next, we have Christina Shannon from Catalina Marketing. Welcome.
Yay. I don't have I was gonna say I don't have a cool Puerto Rican accent. I got this like twang thing from growing up in Ohio and then living in Arkansas for 12 years, working for a little retailer named Walmart. So I got my start, I'd say 2007. RSA security. It's funny because when I was asked to do a bio for this, I was thinking about, well, how do I get my start in security? And it was during a time where hard tokens were the thing. No one wanted to use soft tokens. And then today it's like, right, you're using push, you're using maybe not so much wanting to use push, but there's so many different options. And when you say hard tokens today, people are like, what is that? So I've kind of aged myself, I guess. But spent many years at Walmart, both at working as a partner or vendor, and then also working for them. Then did a stint over what I guess is known as the flyover states or the middle of the country, because then I was a CISO at Quick Trip, which I was just telling someone earlier that they're the Wawa of the Midwest. And then was at Raymond James, senior security director there. Then spent the last 3 years at Anchor Glass in a CIO and a CISO role, and now I'm at Catalina Marketing in a CISO role. Catalina is cool in the sense that it's a data-driven company. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to go work for them, because their whole mission in life is to work with retailers and consumer goods to figure out what they need to do to use data to give insight that turns shoppers into buyers. So. And if I'm bored or I get bored easy, I'm a little fidgety. So if you see me throwing this ball around, just ignore me.
You should come to Schmoopon. I gave everybody a ball.
You can throw it up here, we'll throw it back.
Okay.
He goes,
Yeah. Liven up some room.
Come on, G-Mark, I got that.
I know what you got. Dave, welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm Dave Summit. Wow, we're talking how long we've been in the field. I'm not even going to start to say how long I've been in the field. Long enough that I left Moffitt Center as CISO this 11 months ago. I was there for a little over 6 years. Prior to that, as a CISO at the University of Alabama Birmingham Health System. Came up from Petersburg or Bayfront Health System. Before that, was 21 years with the Defense Department, Navy, doing all kinds of work there. I really enjoyed that. But how I got into security was basically my time with the Defense Department. There was so many things going on that I just absolutely loved, and it was during the good years of the Reagan administration when we had all kinds of money to do whatever. So yeah, I left there and I kind of took some time off. We may talk about it, we may not, but it was a period I realized that anybody in security can get to a position where you start burnout. I was in a burnout period. I just I got to get away from this for a while, clear my head. Because I know there's actually, believe it or not, guys, there really is life outside of cyber. I found that out this past year, and I have absolutely enjoyed this last year. So I started my own company after I was out for a while. I'm doing consulting and advising, and absolutely loving doing it there. Now, taking the shameless plug that you did for your podcast, I started a podcast this year too. 3 Point Cyber, and I will hit you up after we're done here. Take that sponsorship away from him. Move over. So
there's enough for everyone. Like, don't
absolutely. Yeah, we're actually before we talk. We're probably going to do some work.
Not anymore, but. Well, this panel is for you. And so it's an opportunity to talk to some seasoned professionals from different backgrounds, different career paths, who have found themselves working in the role of a CISO. And a lot of times we think of a CISO as sort of being kind of the apex job that we get to. Normally, like, where do you go after a CISO? Another CISO, right? Or then a CISO, as compared to going on and saying, let's be the CEO or founder in some cases. It works out pretty well. But what we want to think about, though, is making this your question and answer, but I want to start out with the first question, which everybody asks, but I'm not going to ask it. Which is going to be, there we go. See, we're not going to ask what keeps you up at night. What did you do this past year that helps you sleep better at night? So we're actually trying to turn that into a sort of a positive thing, which is another way of saying what's working really well out there that you see from as a CISO.
Exercise.
Well, I mean, I
You're not
think,
wrong.
yeah, no, I think finding that, work-life balance is important. Yes, we work, long hours, but you have to, be able to disconnect to a certain extent, right? But I think the most important part from the professional side is, understanding that you have done everything that you can, right? Cybersecurity is all about managing risk, and it's never going to be 100% correct. There's always going to be risk. You're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to manage it, and being able to say, "Yep, I've done everything that I can." If something were to happen, I'm not the first one. I'm not going to be the last one, right? But I have everything in place to deal with the situation. And when you're able to reach that point, you're able to sleep well at night.
Other thoughts?
I don't know, I may be a little bit more anxious than you. Because for me,
Gotta be onward.
I entered into I think that I like football analogies, right? So I like NFL football. I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan. Love them. I know. I even went all the way out there because I thought they might not ever get back, so you better go. But anyway, you see a lot of the defenses in football. They'll do these fancy defenses. They'll do 4-3, 3-4, and then they'll still miss the They'll still miss the tackle that enables like a 60-yard bomb, right? And it's like it's because they missed the tackle. And like what I've discovered, or what not discovered, a pattern I'm seeing as you see more cloud explosion is you see people stop taking inventory of their software and their hardware. It's like, so asset management's gone out the window. I feel like in a lot of companies that have gone cloud first. And so what we did was, looking back, it was kind of a blessing in disguise. We had what we thought was a major incident, couldn't figure out, we used product terminology, couldn't figure out what was tied to the product, right? Because the product wasn't what attackers go after. Attackers go after systems. And I was like, well, this is this product, right? But all the stuff under it, no one knew. So we put forth an exercise to go and figure out what's across 32 clouds subscriptions and get it documented. And now we're working to make it dynamic, but it's one where you can't really have a detection and response strategy or an endpoint, strategy if you don't know what you got, right? You can't even really quantify what your investment should be until you know what you got. So I would say that I was able to sleep a lot better at night because we went through an exercise to get better at asset management in the cloud.
And every company's the same, no matter how big they are. 160,000 people and $4 billion of revenue across the globe is where we exited 2021. And we had no asset management tracking, none.
Ouch.
And 2 breaches. Woo! They're in our SEC filings. Go look them up. But our problem was we couldn't get out of our own way. After the first breach, we couldn't get out of our own way. We knew what we had to fix, couldn't fix it fast enough. So what makes me sleep better at night, or what keeps me up, is I changed jobs. I was offered 2 opportunities, and they were vastly different. I moved away from IT, so I don't report into IT, and I go to a company that doesn't have I went to a company that doesn't have a CIO because we're an app dev shop. But unfortunately, now what I found is we don't have asset management and things like that. So we've got a lot of work to do. So now I'm wearing 2 hats, and I'm the de facto CIO as well as the CISO. And now I have to right the ship based on the experiences that I have. And the good news is my board and my CEO, who I report into, are bought in. And that's the biggest thing. What helps me sleep at night is my executives are bought in, and I don't work for IT.
That's really cool. Dave, thoughts on that?
Mine's real quick. I turned my computer off at 10 o'clock.
Good morning.
Works for 2 hours a day. That rocks.
Look at Dave. He understands half days. 12 hours.
Wake up, have breakfast, cut that podcast, go back to sleep.
Great job if you could do it.
So we're talking about different reporting structures, and ultimately, CEO is responsible for running the organization. And so, from your perspective, kind of like self-reporting here, what are the top metrics the CEO should use to measure CISO effectiveness? That is to say, how would you like to be measured by the boss and held accountable?
Yeah, I think the ultimate KPI is don't get breached, right? If,
Days without a breach,
right?
0.
That's the ultimate one, and I think that's it's an interesting question because what we find in the industry is when it comes to CIOs and CISOs, there's a lot of folks that don't talk the business language, and translating what is going on from the security and compliance standpoint to the business language of a CEO or CFO is very hard. So even establishing KPIs, right? What is it that I'm going to use as a CEO to measure you as a CISO or CIO in terms of successful cybersecurity program? It's hard. I think, obviously not getting breached is one. Being able to maintain, a information security management system that is monitored and that is up to date, on a regular basis. Getting any certifications that are meaningful for the industry you're in. That's another one. And I would say, the one that is coming up very, 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 quickly for many companies, being able to maintain your cyber risk insurance. And I think many of your contracts are attached to being able to have insurance. And many of your insurance policies now are going to require your company to be able to comply with certain standards, right? And and that's meaningful for the CEO because that's business, right? If I don't have insurance, I don't have a contract, I lose revenue. What's going on here, right? If I told the CEO, I don't have asset management, I don't have access control, I need Okta, I need this and that, he's like, what are you talking about, right? That you're getting lost. So those KPIs have to be very much business-driven KPIs.
Don't get breached, business-driven KPIs. Other thoughts?
I would say along those lines, the incidents and if there was financial impact, right? Metrics around incidents, and then what was was it a severe incident? Was it a low impact? What was the monetary impact? I'd also say phishing metrics, and then tie that to training, right? So does the trend go up, or does the trend get better when they do training after they've clicked on the link, right? For the next exercise. I think trending on vulnerability management. I don't think that you go to a CEO and you try to get them to understand what a vulnerability is as much as you do at a high level, but you get them really to see if the trend's going up or down, right? CEOs know what applications are, they know what systems are, they at a high level, right? And so if you say, most of the infrastructure, most of the things we have is more vulnerable than not, they get that, and they get the exposure from such. I also think that probably the most valuable for a CEO is doing a penetration test that tests basically, can you reach their crown jewels, whatever the crown jewels are for that business. And then having some kind of, because CEOs like charts, and I had one tell me once he only deals in numbers, so they like pictures. And so it's like basically showing it to them how many, for that I like doing the internal penetration test, right? Give them a basic set of credentials. And one role I had, it was manufacturing. So I was like, see if they can get to our production. Can they shut us down? And they got there within a day. And that was the only thing I could do to convince a CEO that had the highest risk tolerance I've ever seen to spend on cyber. But it worked, right? So I'd say do metrics that work, that are tied to your business.
I think to be from a CEO perspective, you're right. They don't care to hear all the technical stuff that's going on in your program.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, they don't really care what kind of levels your people are. They just want to know, am I secure, and where is my risk area? So for me, the most effective way to measure the effectiveness of a program is by third-party assessments. You can do all your own assessment all day long, which is greatly needed, and I would do that all the time. But to have an independent someone come in that the CEO can take that report back and look at, it goes a long way.
That's a good point. And my perspective also on that is how has security enabled the business to be more successful? Typically, we think of security as a tax or a friction, a drag. And I think our goal as an effective CISO is to be able to go to the CEO and said, look, we've been able to do better, faster, maybe cheaper. But the point is we can do things that we could not do otherwise if we didn't have an effective security program in place. And therefore, when you do run into something that impacts the business, such as MFA or whatever, to be able to demonstrate there's a huge difference in terms of the benefit to the organization versus the momentary, oh, I got to relearn a new thing. And when I've got my executives trained that within a month of arguing, first, they're going to be defending it, saying, I want to do it. And so that's how human nature is that people will tend to object to change, but then after they'll defend what they're doing. And so you can take advantage of that
It
psychology.
rolls all the way back to the buy-in, the executive buy-in. You can't get your executives bought in if you don't understand the business. My CEO asked for a 90-day plan in my first week, the mythical 90-day plan, right? It doesn't exist. And I evaluated the environment and said, there's no way I can deliver a 90-day plan. I'm going to give you a rolling 30-day plan because I've got a lot of shit to fix.
Well, if you do deliver the 90
Measure
days.
me on the progress, measure me on the difference I'm making, right? And then I'll come back with a 90-day plan. Then I'll come back with a 2-year plan and push it from there.
I just wanted to comment on that. So I got the same, right? My current role was like, I want to see your 90-day plan. So then you whip out, what you do is you do qualitative risk assessment. So you look at the NIST framework, you're looking at CIS, and then you're interviewing, right? That's really what you're doing. And then we happen, so I, based our plan off of those because that's what I had and with the understanding that I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
Then we had a major incident investigation and we went back to go answer all those questions and the answers looked a lot different. So
It's interesting when you're just doing a paperwork drill.
Yep.
And CMMC migrating from, we
How
will
can you-
inspect and prove it to, just self-certify. We'll see how that one.
How can you deliver a 90-day plan if you don't know the business? Learn the business.
Yeah.
So how does your CEO measure you? Learn the business, develop metrics that match the business, and then produce on those metrics and make a difference.
Decode.
How many of you work for the board or work for legal?
I work for legal.
I work for the board and the CEO.
Nice.
So where I work, it's a major competitor to Walmart. We both, my colleague is here, we both, our signature blocks say legal. I'm a staff level threat hunter. Nobody wants to get my email.
And the interesting thing about reporting through legal is, I'm sure you'll be able to report, is that if your company is doing an acquisition, remember when Verizon acquired Yahoo and way along the process after a price had been set, they said, oh yeah, by the way, there's only 3 billion breached accounts. Why was cybersecurity not brought into the picture? Because you don't sit at the grown-ups table on the acquisition thing. You've got legal, you've got finance, you've got the executive team. You're trying to figure out how do we squeeze money out of it. But with cybersecurity tucked under legal, you now have a seat at that table and you can do the risk assessment with your own team and say, you know what, the numbers look great and the business model looks great, but there's a problem here, there's a red flag, and let me show you what you might be getting. They do not have access to that. Thoughts on you being illegal, which is different from your peers here, and how that works to your advantage or maybe even disadvantage?
I'd say it works to your advantage for all the examples you just used, definitely. And then also too, when it comes to things like our third-party risk management program, for example, other than it still being question Q&A based, it's integrated in our procurement process, which was the first time I'd seen that. And that was because the procurement team has lawyers on it that report in through legal, right? Mm-hmm. And so that merging, I thought, was really, on the risk side, and contracts and
A lot of synergy.
I think that there's a lot of benefits in terms of like the big picture types of things we're trying to do in security. The downside, I think, or the don't let this happen to you warning is sometimes you can show up to an environment where for 5 years they've been in the cloud and there's 32 scrum teams and there's X number of products and the security team's focused on the data center. So I would tell you that that's the downside, is that sometimes the IT guys run away and you lose track of them.
I just want to tie on to that. So I've been involved where we've had security engaged as part of the M&A due diligence beforehand. It was a new process, right? And as soon as we got down that path and we found all sorts of things that were making the deal less favorable, right? We shut it down. We actually blocked an M&A, an acquisition. What's interesting is business teams now hate security, right? Before, they were happy hating on lawyers, right? So if a legal team shut it down, they're like, okay, well, we hate those guys, but it's understandable. Security is different because I don't think the business teams have yet quite understood what the impact can be when you buy a lemon, right? And there's a lot of lemons for sale. And so it's just interesting. It's a developing sort of industry for the business world to, and like you're seeing the SEC say, hey, we want cybersecurity people in the boardroom. But I don't think yet it's caught on because I'm still seeing the hate from the business teams when you come in and shut a deal down because they're going, I'm trying to grow and you're stopping me. Like, why can't you just fix this?
Yeah,
Well, to your point, I was just gonna say, so recently I had an example where we do a lot of proof of concepts because Catalin's a data company, right? And so a lot of our clients, they want to use our data. And so a lot of the data contracts, I review those in terms of just to make sure, because a lot of them contain breach notification clauses, right? And there was one that was notify if it was a suspected breach within 12 hours. And then they had all these other things around it that just weren't feasible. And I shut that down, which I would have never seen it if I was at the CISO and IT.
I wanted to add that, this is something that I tell to my team is when you look at cybersecurity as a business enabler, the conversation changes, right? So, when you do an assessment of a merger and acquisition, you can say, okay, well, this is the level of risk. Because there's always going to be risk, right? I mean, there's no perfect company, right? When you can measure the level of risk in terms of financial impact, as well as how much it's going to cost to fix what you found, then you have the prospect of being able to add that to the transaction, right? Instead of just shutting down the transaction altogether. So I think that's a big difference. Because when we position it as a don't buy because it's a mess, right? That's very negative because the business guys want to do business, right? There's no stopping that train, right? They want to continue to move forward. And, right, you just need to be able to position that in where it's, okay, well, you're buying a $10 million, property, right, or company. And now you're probably going to need to spend an additional $1 million in fixing all the issues that you have. And by the way, before you even think about integrating them into your system, make sure you fix them, right? Because that might be the conduit in which your bigger company gets breached, right? So if you put it in that position, I think, it makes a complete difference. Now you are a business partner, right? Now you are talking about their language. I think that's the way we see it.
Or if you find in, like, for example, we had an M&A recently where it was like open source. There was too much open source code, right, in the product that we were looking to buy. And so that was one where I think the business actually thanked us because it was would have been in trouble later down the road had we bought that. So I don't know. I think that the maturity though on the business side, I don't think it's there yet. And I think that we just keep. I think the industry keeps like publishing things and like to try to push it there, but I think something else has to be done. I don't know what though.
But you've got to be a partner, you've got to establish trust, and then you've got to go in with quantifiable data, because if you don't, it's just an opinion.
Yeah.
But
And
I
they're
mean,
gonna
like-
hate you for your opinion.
Yeah.
But to get it beyond the board, I mean, like, or to get the board to where they're like more savvy or to where there's more understanding about what we do and the ebb and flow, like, I think that what you're saying works in the organization, but I just think there's a broader like industry focus that needs to
Every
think about
company
merging.
is different.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a multi layered question, but so if you don't have a CIO or if you're working directly with a CFO, especially if you're hit by compliance, whether that would be, HIPAA or PCS or whatever it is. So let's say you have a budget that's not conductive to having all the security things in place that require you to meet your certification, and you're kind of put in a place where you have to hit a check mark, or you actually have to build out an actual security platform that would kind of work out. How do you navigate being able to stay compliant, but at the same time have all the aspects of your security program to actually be secure?
It's great to see you, Andre. Good to see you, man.
Hey.
Oh no, I'm not taking that.
We go on to the next question. I got one.
It should be question number 10, I think. This is gonna take a while.
That's a very detailed question.
Yeah.
CISO.
So as a CISO, I would never, ever check off something for sake of compliance. just for the sake of compliance. There's too many false things that come out of checking things off for compliance purposes. Checking it off doesn't make you secure. My job is to ensure that the organization's secure. Now, if I'm hearing the question correctly, how do you juggle that?
In the budget.
I would much rather say, we're not checking that off for compliance purposes, which elevates the visibility to someone higher than even me. Why are you not gonna check this off? Well, here, now you've asked me the question, now I can give you the reason why we're not gonna check something off just for compliance sake, right? And it might be because I don't have the resources, the budget to do it, which now opens that discussion. What do we need to do to ensure we're compliant, but we're more secure than what we were going into that whole situation, right? So that's been mine, and it's worked well for me over the years. I will never just check something off for a compliance purpose. It's not just.
Have you ever been breached? The bad guys don't give a shit about your scope.
How many people?
So I have worked for a private equity company, and I've had boards tell me to outsource security, and it seems similar to what your question is, in the sense of, is the ask to prioritize compliance, basically to just check the boxes and don't do any more? Is that kind of the direction you've been given?
Well, I guess the question stems from like, you guys, you don't have an unlimited amount of money, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And you're responsible, especially if there's no CIO, to make sure that with the budget that you have, you're kind of stuck between business continuation, right? You can't,
So you're in a dual role then?
in a way, yeah.
Okay, all right. So I think I have a better grasp of your question now. So I just give you my own personal experience. So I worked for a CEO who hated security. He had a very high risk tolerance, way beyond my comfort level. And it's really hard when you start at a place like Walmart that's doing sophisticated security programs in like 2008. And then as your career evolves, you're seeing it get worse because of the companies you join. Like it's hard for like my brain just exploded with that person. But anyway, so what I did was I looked at, I reverse engineered basically like what's your crown jewels, find your crown jewels, and then go secure those first. And then like make that your top priority. Where's your crown jewels, and go secure those. And then that's where your budget goes. And that's how I would basically, and then I'd use a penetration test to show what would happen if they don't do that. But because it kind of sounds like you're in one where you can't do it all, and you've got to pick and choose. So what I did in that life was I went and found all my inventory, and I got a really good MDR solution that I could count on with automated response.
So
So
if I may for a couple more seconds. So I'm in a consulting and a professional services role. So a lot of times when you get brought in, it's to do gap fill and things like that, right? And as a consultant, you're sitting there trying to explain to, a CEO or somebody higher up that like you have these things that would in a way put you out of compliance, right? And you're asking me to fill these gaps, but the budget that you have listed out as what you're willing to spend on this isn't conductive to what you're trying to do. So you're in a supportive role, but you're also limited by what your client is kind of putting you into this box, right? So you're in a position where you're stuck in this box, and this box isn't conductive to what they're trying to do, and you're trying to explain to the client that you kind of have to do it, right? And then what is the best way to go about that?
There's always option C. CEO's perspective, there's always option C, which is do nothing.
yeah,
I want one more thing about that thought, because Christina just brought up something. I've seen all too often security programs have wrong priorities. And we have such a wide range of things to cover in an organization. And every organization is going to be a little bit different. So it's the asset inventories, it's the crown jewels of your company, combined with what are the threats that your company could be facing right now. And that's where you focus your attention. Why am I covering the whole wide range of cybersecurity for a company if this area over here has an extremely low probability of ever causing me issues, and this one over here is really high? Which one am I going to focus on? And I've seen too many organizations do a team that they try to cover everything. They try to do everything at once. That will not work.
if it's an advisor role and you're advising, I mean, it might be at the point where you just lay it out there. Here's your options, and then you let it go.
Yeah, I wanted to add, when it comes to compliance, right, specifically, HIPAA compliance, some of the other compliance, which are requirements to do business, right? you have to build a case on the business side of what is at stake. Right, so as you know, is it the viability of the business? Are you gonna miss on contracts? Right, or are you at the risk of being fined, right, by the Department of Health Services, right? So if you're able to position that from that perspective, obviously the spend, right, has to be commensurate with what you're trying to save and the size of the company, right? I mean, maybe the budget is the budget because the company is making no money, right?
Reputation.
Right, but you have to be able to explain it that way because it also happens as well, and we see it quite often, right? In the technology professionals, they tend to have a laundry list of things they want to buy. The CEOs are already like very, very cautious about they want to buy everything that's available out there, right? So they're very, sometimes they don't believe that the budget that you're putting in front of them is they really need it. Right, but and I think Dan, he works from with me. It's here, every time I bring a need as a security product to our CEO and our CFO, I always attach that to a requirement. This is required based on our cyber risk policy, for instance. Right, this is required based on our ISO 27001 compliance. Right. This is not because it's a cool gadget, right? This is required. And when you put it in those words, now we're talking about business, right? Because if I don't have my ISO 27001 and my SOC 2 Tech 2 compliance, well, I'm not able to do business with those companies that require that by contract. Right? So we already have like a value associated to what is at stake. And I think that's how I position budget in a request.
Or hire a Scottish CISO who doesn't like spending money.
There you go, that's what you do. Hey, I've got a question from remote from Bill. He says, what are your thoughts about the latest news that the SEC is pressuring to formalize CISOs as part of the overall executive level C-suite of the organization and report to the board of directors? I had not read that, so that's news to me.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about making a CISO go right to the board of directors, even now, or more precisely, for publicly traded companies, that being mandated compared to finding something that works? Because you've got something that works, it seems.
I actually briefed our board and our CEO on this, and I've got a follow-up briefing coming up on Monday because it's front and center in everybody's minds. And one of the things that's often missed is they're now requiring, beyond that, the actual board themselves has to have cybersecurity bench strength within the board. So instead of your board being a bunch of business leaders and investors, your board now has to have somebody on that board that is going to be able to deliver cybersecurity accountability down through the organization, as well as your CISO or whoever you appoint as the head of the security in your organization has to be qualified. Now that's the kicker, right? Doesn't mean you're certified. Doesn't mean you go to CEH and you get their certified CISO, because if you're a certified CISO and you've never taken the time to be a business leader, you're going to be a failing CISO. Certification is not going to get you what you need. It's got to be experience. It's got to understand that business and apply the context of security to it. But now the SEC piece, the proposal's in, everything's being drafted, boards are inherently asking questions. And the questions they're being encouraged to ask is, to Christina's point, what are our crown jewels? Do you know where they are? What controls have you put in place to secure them? And then what are your detection mechanisms? And then how are you working through incident response? All of that's in the NIST CSF. So as a CISO, realistically, to answer that question, how do you then approach and deliver what the SEC is proposing? Build your security framework around NIST CSF, because it's got everything in simply understood terms. You're not going to blindside your board or your investors, your CFO, with language they don't understand. Identify your assets, protect them, detect when they're being hit, and then respond quickly. Keyword. And then recover and build it in and learn the process again. Continual improvement, continuous life cycle. That's how you address the SEC filings. And we discussed this at Guide Points, WFCSA. I always get left wrong. West Florida Cybersecurity Alliance the other day, and it's front and center in everybody's minds. Everybody's asking the same question. I hope that helps.
I think so. And kind of related to that is question 3. We're pretty good. We got through the third slide after 40 minutes. But yeah, what are the potential implications of governments requiring cybersecurity licenses? That is to say, should a CISO have to be certified like a CPA? Now, this is going beyond just the SEC environment to saying, you've got to have a ticket that's stamped by something other than like a training organization or a certifying private company to say, yeah, like an MD or a DDS or something like that. You can't just declare yourself to be a doctor or a lawyer.
I think it's all great news, right? I think what that's gonna result is on boards approving more balanced budgets for security, right? Definitely more prepared CISOs in high level positions. It's definitely gonna require the CISOs to get ready to talk the business language, right? Being able to put together your dashboards and your 1 to 2 slide presentations for the board, not the 100-page report, right? Which we're very much used to read on a daily basis. And I think in terms of the certification as a CPA, perhaps it's a good idea, right? Because I mean, it'll definitely identify which are the best researchers out there. And for the ones that are not at the level, they'll have to get prepared to be certified. And then there's CPE, credits, that you can take, which perhaps most of the CISOs are doing some additional work to get those. I think it's all great news. I think what is going to really result is something that we need in this country is cyber risk overall is going to be reduced. Because I mean, what we see right now in terms of the day in and day out breach is really just mismanagement of cyber risk for the most part. I mean, we think about cyber attacks being highly sophisticated, but in most cases are just very simple things that are being exploited. And we're still 10, 12 years after, we're still dealing with those, right? I mean, we haven't been able to catch up. Hopefully this will accelerate the catch up so we can get to a proactive stance to manage risk with more a more systematic way where now you can really focus on what is highly sophisticated attacks and you're not at risk of being breached for something that is very simple.
But everybody pays attention to what the rest of the world's doing and what legislature's doing. Singapore has passed a law. Their government agency has passed a law saying if you're a cybersecurity company, looking at any vendors in the room, and saying if you're a cybersecurity company, then you have to be licensed by the government to operate and pass some very stringent tests in order to operate as a cybersecurity company in Singapore.
Yep.
You don't pass those tests, you can't do business. They shut you down. Now, the world is watching how that's working, right?
Yep.
And that's going to affect all of us. And there's 45 states have passed or are passing cybersecurity legislation over the last year in 2021. So it's coming. We're going to get more and more regulators as an industry because when the government start regulating cybersecurity in general, and not just government agencies having to do cybersecurity, or government vendors, it'll roll to the public sector and the private sector, and then we'll all be in the same boat.
I think what he said, it's coming. I mean, we're just in a day and age where cyber field is maturing rapidly. It's changing rapidly, and I think we're gone from the teen years, now we're the teenager year. That's kind of where it's all going. But I'm on the fence. I'm not sure about that. Number one, I would like to know who you're going to certify me against, who's going to be the certification. I'm definitely not for the government coming in, stepping in, saying it's going to happen. I'm more with, look at.
You don't need more taxes.
You got an attorney, you got any attorneys in the room? You could be board certified to practice law, right? You gotta be medically certified to practice as a doctor. If you want to give this field a more air of legitimacy, then there may need to be some kind of certification process. No doubt about it. I think that's where it's headed.
And I think we saw that back in the Rockefeller-Snow Act of 2006 and 8. I think 3 times it was introduced into Congress, which is basically for those who want to go dig back through old congressional records. There was an effort to do that, to create some requirement about 14 years ago to do security certifications from the government. But of course, then the question is who in the government is qualified to do so? Because like we talked about in my talk this morning at 10 o'clock, there's kind of a diode that says you get trained in the government, you go out and you make more money in the side. And it's usually only later in life when you say, okay, I made my money, I'll come back and be an advisor to the president or something like that. But you want to do some rock star type job instead of saying, I want to come back and kind of work third shift in some particular stock. Sri had a question.
Yeah, I had a question. I didn't want to skip anybody else who was maybe before me.
If you had your hand up, I thought you were.
He had his hand up, I think, before me. I'll go out there.
All right, so we'll go to him. Thank you very much for your courtesy.
Yeah, I think Steve, I think you're right. Like there should be something from the government that could help certify. But the problem rises like in Russia, like China, the government for cybersecurity company or any company says, okay, you have to qualify, blah, 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 but put our certificate in your product.
The Chinese government required a
Yeah.
tap in every telecom data center.
Yeah. So then it's like, well, then we can't trust the companies that we should trust to protect ourselves. We can't trust them. So it's like,
You know, this is already happening, right? I mean, for federal agencies, if you have a platform, right, it has to be FedRAMP compliance. And, you know, there are strict requirements around that, right? I mean, it has to be in the Gulf Cloud. Now AWS is FedRAMP compliant, so it could be in AWS. It has to be, you know, have the controls of the NIST 800-53 implemented. You have to use FIPS 142 compliance, which is, you know, the one approved by the federal government. So this is already happening.
That doesn't make you secure.
No, well, I mean, obviously the controls are being put in place. But
all
you
they
know,
are.
it does require, well, FedRAMP is coming to the state level. It's called State RAMP now, driven by Texas. And so what that means is, you know, like if you have a software platform that you want to sell to the government, you know, at any state, you'll have to comply with these requirements, right? We're saying the same thing with the DoD DIP, right? The Defense Industrial Base. Now you have to be CMMC compliant, right? So there's a requirement, and there'll be certification eventually. It's taking a long time, but there will be certification by third party, you know, assessor like an audit firm. Also, the DoD will send their own auditors, right, to check your business. So it is happening already. I think it's happening more for the providers of services to the DoD and the federal agencies and the state government, but the same thing will happen as well for the service providers for the commercial side eventually, I think.
Yeah,
So-
can I tack those two things together? Because
Yeah.
you've hit on a really important point, and I want to laser in on what you said. Sorry, I didn't catch your name. Max, thanks. So we were formerly a BPO with my last company. So servicing the needs of all sorts of organizations, including Verizon. So Verizon was one of our clients. So Verizon does business with the federal government. Now we're getting to third-party risk, because now Verizon are outsourcing their customer support to us. So when you think of cybersecurity, customer support, you know, you're handling customer data, we had to be PCI compliant for Verizon, you know, processing phones, all this kind of stuff. However, from a physical security standpoint, right, so totally the other side of the shop, not talking cyber anymore, we're talking physical, access control requirements, CCTV camera requirements, but wait, remember the space shuttle was built out of the cheapest parts, right? So physical security, CCTV cameras, we're using Hikvision CCTV cameras. Hikvision CCTV cameras we found to have a chip in them, which if they were published with their interface externally, that chip could be accessed by the Chinese government. We never published any of our CCTV cameras on land, so we were mitigated. However, Verizon, doing business with the US government, had a mandate that said you cannot use Hikvision across you or your third party. So Verizon came to us and said, what cameras are you using? And we're like, well, that's a strange question. Okay, depends on where we are. Costa Rica, Philippines, where are we? But mostly we use Hikvision. Okay, rip them all out. Can't have any Hikvision in any center where you've got Verizon. We had to change it. We went with Hanwha. So, different side of the shop, right? Still cheap, still got the job done, but didn't have the chip. So it's that third-party risk component, hardware, software, mandates by the federal government, not just to you, but possibly to your clients, and that all rolls down here. And there's always a business impact. That's it.
You know, the SBOM, you know, supplier bill of materials, software bill of materials that was proposed in the President's cybersecurity proposal back in May of last year. I think you're at the top.
My question is more theoretical, and this has been a great panel. Speaking, and I know we have people against the government, but to me, and I know,
I'm against more taxes.
more government.
No, more taxes.
Taxes.
How many taxes we had in this country in 1900? One? None.
From Scotland, 42% income tax, by the way. I'm so grateful I live in Florida now.
I know there is a position, but do you think that we're gonna get to the point when there is like a CISO for the United States? I know there's been people that work there, we have speakers that come there, but it's not like official. And when we think of defense, we think of like the Secretary of Defense, which is, you know, the military and stuff like that. But do you think we're gonna get to the point where there has to be like a CISO for the country, somebody who's the top security guy, and like you say, trickles downhill to the rest, you know, to his peers, which would be you guys, and then go down? Do you think we'll ever get there, or do you think we need that? Because I truly believe we need something like that. Like,
National level scapegoat.
Come on, Dave.
Who, you, Mark, I'm gonna put you up for that position. I'm gonna nominate you for that.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Exactly.
I don't think we'll ever get there. I think there's still a lot of things that's gonna change. I think there are initiatives right now that are making government, private, and public sector stuff more collaborative. But when you get to a place where you have one person that's gonna be responsible for the entire United States.
when I say responsible, I mean, you're responsible for a company, but of course you have your peer, you know, you.
So if you wanna go down that route, there already are. You
Yeah.
have a CISO for.
Last thing anybody needs is-
Me, that's the guy right there, or the one for the National Security Agency, or even right now.
I think Jen Easterly.
With,
even.
yeah.
Thanks, really. Doing a great job.
But
I don't feel like all of them kind of go up. I kind of they're their own things, and we would check in and get help if we needed.
You
Or
hit the problem right there.
Yeah.
There's way too many arms out here the government's got in different areas. And I found that in my long career with the government too. We would have all these different people doing almost the same thing, and they would never talk to each other about it.
The left hand doesn't know what
That
the
kind
right
of
hand
stuff
is
is
doing.
changing, but we're seeing a rapid change in cybersecurity right now.
But the bigger the companies, it's I call it big company disease. It's like people stop talking to each other and they forget to talk to each other, and like
That's why I like what the CISA is doing. They're pulling
Yeah.
public-private government partnerships together. That fusion center model that worked so well, right?
yeah.
It was one of the intents of the ISACs.
Mhm.
You know, the ISACs start talking together, the Information Sharing and Analysis.
The ISAC.
Yeah.
The ISAC.
What we did at hacker conferences for the last 35 years.
Imagine that.
I think more than, I think more than anything, we need more soldiers and less generals, because the big gap we all have is that there's so few people that actually technically know what they're doing, but there's plenty of people that can describe to you, but never get specific.
But that's not gonna change.
It is
And the only thing that's gonna fix that is automation.
I disagree. I think automation's a big problem.
So honestly, yeah, that's a whole other topic.
There you go.
I would say,
Altercation in the hallway, till the 11.
yeah.
It's goon?
This one's Will Smith.
So, we've got a couple minutes left, but let's kind of move away a little bit from what we're doing with the government. Here's an interesting thought. Something that all of us probably have to do at some point on both ends. The best way to perform a third-party risk review, and any thoughts on alternatives to filling out client or questionnaires. You know, we give them and then we get them. They're always different.
Automation.
Automation.
I previewed 3 vendors in the last 2 months to try and take this lift. It's about work, moving from meaningless red work to meaningful gold work, and that green work in the middle, which is that no man's land. So how do you get your team moving from the red work of completing 500 questions SIGs to the gold work of what actually matters? Give them a tool, they'll automate it, because 75% of those SIGs are the same questions,
Yes.
realistically.
I know.
The rest are the nuances. They're the same questions asked a little differently. So we hit on 2 vendors. I'm not going to name them. I'll leave them nameless, but one in particular allows you to take the first SIG that you've done, or successful SIGs that you've done, which have won new business, not ones that necessarily haven't. Take all those responses, make them cookie cutter, put them in a platform, use the AI, the ML, whatever you want to call it, to then read your next SIG and go, we think that this question should have this answer, yes, no. Yeah, I agree with that. Yes. Okay, move on. And it pre-populates the rest of it. Moving from red work to gold work. That's how I'd approach it. And I do the same on the third-party questionnaires that I send out. I hate them. I would love to just have an automated system that pushes it to a vendor and just goes, hey, you got any pre-canned responses? Just put them in this platform. It'll populate.
Other thoughts, or keep rolling, because we're trying to through a couple more questions. What do you see on the horizon from a technological perspective? This could be a game changer in this industry. You were talking about being at a significant inflection point, but
I was gonna say like one of each, if you don't mind, like something that I see from a people perspective that I don't think enough people are talking about is that there's a lot of security teams and big companies that are still going out and buying software and installing it on VMs, unaware of how far the cloud's evolved and how DevOps teams are configuring security in the cloud. So I think that what's happening if folks don't start talking about it more soon is that a lot of security people are going to wake up where infrastructure people were in 2008 when storage and all those things started getting consolidated and clouds started being talked about. And then infrastructure people like me, I used to be a storage girl, thought, crap, I should go do something else. Let me try security. But I feel like I see the same wave happening right now. Is like, and I saw it. My best example is my company. It's like they've made these ecosystems now. Where all your workloads are in the cloud and it's point and click configuration to go across the NIST domain for a lot of controls. And that doesn't cover it all, but people need to know that that's going to be a part of the companies they join and how to work in those worlds. So it's just, I think that is probably something I'd say that it's not happening and something cool that's happening, I think is the proliferation of how use cases for blockchain. I think that, did anybody use Coinbase?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's all blockchain. So, and I think I think there's some, it's also at the point where, the technology that's so new, if they don't do security by design, then it's flawed like IoT and other things. And so there's some inherent risk there, but I don't know. I dig blockchain and where it's going.
we're getting pretty close to the end of our allotted time slot. We got someone else coming in behind us. So what we'd like to do is thank our panel here. There you go. So we'd like to present you with is a presenter here is a little kid from Eastside. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We need to take the time. Now, we should have the time. These folks want to stick around a little bit. I thought we had a room set aside for CISO follow-up.
We can do hallway con.
We do hallway. All the noise, by the way, at the other end, they had a bottle of scotch. Hold on.
Oh, that's right, there's some Obama, that's right.
Really good. I mean, it's just good to have,
I'm all about efficiency.
Okay.
How are you gonna respond?
kids,
You need to be equal.